everybody, it's Aubrey again, and I'm back for another Bible unpacking video. Today I will be discussing Genesis chapter 8 through 11, I believe. Again, huge shout out to Daily Audio Bible, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be making these videos, because they really help me a lot. I use their app, and I listen to the chronological one specifically. So in Genesis chapters 8 through 11, it starts out with the end of the flood. So the waters recede, and Noah waits until the earth is dry, and then God tells him and his family and all of the animals that he took into the ark with him to come out. And one of the things that Noah did was he built an altar to the Lord, and he gave burnt offerings of every kind of clean animal to God. And it says that God smelled the pleasing aroma of Noah's sacrifice, and that's when he decided that he wanted to establish a covenant with Noah and all of his descendants. And I would like to point out, this is I believe another one of those generational blessings that show up. There's generational curses and generational blessings that show up in the Bible, and God makes a generational blessing for Noah and his descendants. So the blessing is the covenant that he makes with Noah is that he will never destroy the earth again through a flood. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dog Theodore barking in the background again. He does that a lot. The sign of the covenant is the rainbow, and I think that's one of the most beautiful things. But anyway, so because of Noah's decision, he decided to make a covenant with Noah and his descendants. And God decides to make that covenant with Noah not because all of Noah's descendants would be faithful to him, but because Noah was faithful to him. And we see kind of the same type of narrative later on in the time of King David. So King David was faithful to God, aside from the incident with Bathsheba and Uriah, I think is her husband's name. Aside from that, he was faithful to God. And because of that, God promised David that somebody from his descendant line would always be on the throne. And not all of David's descendants were faithful to God, which is why most of Israel got taken away from his family line, and they only ruled Judah for quite some time. Because so even though not all of David's descendants were faithful, David was. And so even when God was faced with these descendants who were not faithful to him, he remembered David. And it says he remembered David. And that's the same type of narrative that we see here with Noah. Not all of his descendants would be faithful, but Noah was. So he remembered Noah and his descendants. And actually everybody is a descendant of Noah, because him and his family were the ones who repopulated the earth. And now I'm going to get into the family lines of his sons, which I find very interesting. So he had 3 sons, Shem, Japheth, and Ham. And there is a story about Noah. He plants a vineyard, and he gets drunk off the wine, which one thing I remember is before the flood, the ground was cursed. And so I'm wondering if he was just so excited about having good crops and that's why he got overexcited about the wine. But anyway, that's just a speculation. I could be entirely wrong. It's just something that came to mind with me. But Noah got drunk, and he took his clothes off inside of his tent. And Ham, who is Noah's youngest son, goes into the tent, sees his father naked, and he goes and he tells his two older brothers that their father is naked in his tent. And so what Shem and Japheth do, they get a blanket and they carry it on their shoulders and they walk into the tent backwards and they put the blanket on top of their father and then walk out. But they went in backwards so that they wouldn't see him naked. So Ham dishonored his father by his actions, and Shem and Japheth honored his father. And I believe Shem is the oldest son, and in pretty much the whole Bible, there's a huge significance about firstborn sons in particular. And when Noah finds out what his sons did, so he finds out that Ham dishonored him and Shem and Japheth honored him, he gets really angry with Ham, and he says that Ham is cursed and he will be Shem's slave, and he speaks blessings upon Shem and Japheth. And sorry, I need to correct myself. He didn't say that Ham will be Shem's slave. He said that Canaan would be Shem's slave, who is Ham's son. So Ham's son will be the slave of Shem. And the reason why I find this particular piece so interesting is because of who those three sons turn out to be. So I'm not going to get too much into Japheth, just because I don't have much to say about it. But for as far as Shem, so he's the son that Noah spoke the biggest blessings about. He also spoke blessings to Japheth, but especially over Shem, he spoke blessings over Shem, and Shem was the oldest. And Israel, like the people of Israel, is actually descendants of Shem. So, like, there's Shem, and then his descendants, and then eventually there's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then Jacob becomes Israel, and Israel / Jacob has 12 sons, and those become the 12 tribes of Judah. Obviously, there's like more generations in there, but those are like some of the major key players. And so that's where Shem's family line goes into. And Israel they become God's chosen people. And another thing to point out is Noah is a descendant of Seth, which was the righteous son of Adam and Eve, aside from Abel, who was killed. So again, we have these generational blessings like continuing, but Ham kind of screws it up for himself. And Ham gets spoken curses upon him because he dishonored his father. And the descendants of Ham actually become some of Israel's greatest enemies. There's 7 in particular: the Hittites, the Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. So those are the 7 peoples that God tells Israel. He gives these people's land to Israel because these people, the Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, they were very immoral. They were actually worshippers of the god Baal. And just a side note, something Brent Hansen pointed out to me. He's a radio show host and also podcaster, but he pointed out that, like, he always thought that idols in the Bible were just like stone things that people made from themselves, but it actually says in the Bible that like God appointed gods over different people, like after he scattered them. But he said, but these people here will be my people. I will be their God. So the people, they actually are worshiping real spiritual beings. But the differences between those spiritual beings and our God, my God, is so different. So we've already seen a lot of God's character. He's a God of promise, a God of love, and just some things about these nations that worshipped the god Baal, the false god Baal. This is from landofthebible.com. They believed in incest, bestiality, adultery, child sacrifice, rape, temple sex with prostitutes, orgies, and other sexual deviances. So that's the difference between Shem's descendants and Ham's descendants. And there it is again, the generational blessings and curses. What people do and what people leave undone matters a lot. And that's a quote that I got from China Brown, who is the woman who did the Audio Bible Chronological last year. And you can see that narrative especially later on when it gets to the Kings and the Chronicles. And another nation that are descendants of Ham are the Philistines. And the Philistines were very, very often at war with the Israelites. So now that I've talked about the ancestry lines of Noah and how that plays out, I'm going to talk about the Tower of Babel, because that's also in these chapters. So at that time, people all spoke the same language, and they started gathering together, and they said, let's make a name for ourselves so we will not be scattered throughout the earth. So one thing that jumps out to me about this is they say, let's make a name for ourselves so that this thing won't happen to us. Well, if I say, let me make a name for myself so that bad things aren't going to happen to me, I'm putting faith in myself. I'm putting faith in my own control, my own ability to control things. I'm not putting my faith in God. If I am relying on making a name for myself to be able to be okay and avoid consequences. And one thing God really, really does not like is when people try to exalt themselves over him. So instead of saying, let's honor God and lift God's name higher so that bad things aren't, so that he will protect us, they were basically saying, let's make a name for ourselves so that we can protect ourselves and be in control ourselves. And so God says, if they're able to do this, because what they were trying to do is they were trying to make a tower up to the sky to make a name for themselves. God says, if they are able to do this when they can all communicate to each other, nothing they will be able to do will be impossible. And so he goes, and him and the angels, they confuse everybody's language and scatters them throughout the earth. And so that's ironic to me, because the people were making this tower to avoid being scattered throughout the earth, and the consequence of that is being scattered throughout the earth. So rebelling against God and exalting themselves backfired so much. I don't have anything else to say about that, because it just backfired. I hope that some people are enjoying this. And I love you guys. And today is the 3rd day of January, by the way. Okay. I love you guys. Bye.